Hello again, everybody. Welcome into Gamecock Central Radio. Emerson Phillips joined by Wes Mitchell. Wes, a busy recruiting weekend for the Gamecocks this past weekend. What can you tell us?
Yeah, a big recruiting weekend. You had several official visitors on campus. Actually, the first recruiting weekend of the Muschamp era, and the final recruiting weekend before the dead period that hit today. So, it was really, I think, a situation where South Carolina had about 5 days to try to, get certain guys on campus. They were able to do that. Had what I think was a very successful weekend when you consider they were able to get guys like Brandon McLeod, the quarterback commitment in, Brian Edwards, the Conway wide receiver who at one time was committed to South Carolina, now considering South Carolina and Clemson. Down to the guys like C.J. Freeman. You had even some guys that South Carolina really hadn't been on the radar with previously in Jamarcus King, who's a junior college cornerback, and Sam Denmark, who is a wide receiver from Hanahan that the old staff wasn't really recruiting, and then Kevin Ridley, who is actually a four-star prospect from Deerfield Beach, Florida. So they not necessarily a huge group, quantity-wise, but very, very high quality with those 6 guys.
Wes, a number of Gamecock prospects were playing in state championship games that were held Saturday at Williams-Brice. Can you talk about the coaching staff's ability to interact with some of these kids, being that they were playing in their state championship games at Williams-Brice on Saturday? How involved was the coaching staff Saturday afternoon with all these teams in town? And do you know if any coaches were on hand for those games? How did that go?
Yeah, not really much interaction, but it was just kind of an opportunity, for these prospects to play in Williams-Brice Stadium, which is obviously a pretty exciting thing for a lot of those guys. Maybe a little bit of a help recruiting-wise, I think, just that those guys get an opportunity to play in that stadium. But, I know that Will Muschamp, Bobby Bentley, Sean Elliott were all on the sidelines for I know at least one of those games. I heard they were down there for a second game as well. But, you had guys like John Simpson there at Fort Dorchester, who was a South Carolina target playing in the first game. You had Nick McLeod for South Point, who does not yet have a South Carolina offer, but is hoping to get one. Chris Smith for South Point, this Carolina commitment. And then Darion Kendrick, who's class 2018 kid that athlete that's going to be just a fantastic prospect down the road. So, you had some big-time players. In the Northwestern game, you, of course, had the kid Logan Rudolph, the younger brother of Mason Rudolph, who's out of Oklahoma State, putting up big numbers at quarterback. So, there was some pretty talented kids on the field at Williams-Brice Stadium on Saturday.
Had a chance to see Chris Smith play Saturday. South Point beat Midland Valley 35-0 for the 3A state championship, and the South Point defense was outstanding, and they were really anchored by their secondary with Chris Smith at corner and Nick McLeod, as you mentioned, playing safety. So McLeod's got some other offers. What are the chances the Gamecocks get on him late in this recruiting cycle?
Yeah, they're looking really hard at him. They're evaluating him. They want him to visit in January, and I think there's still a pretty good chance that he can pick up an offer from South Carolina. He's got a solid offer list. He's looking, he's got an offer from Vanderbilt. He's got an offer from NC State to go along with some other schools like Northwestern, I think. So, if South Carolina doesn't offer, then I would probably give the best chance to NC State. But if South Carolina offers, then I think they're going to have an excellent shot to get McLeod.
You mentioned John Simpson, the offensive lineman from Fort Dorchester. Fort D won big on Saturday in the noon game, and everybody in the country, it seems, is on John Simpson, Wes, and he's obviously a player that I would think the Gamecocks would be very interested in getting. What can you tell us about his interest in South Carolina?
Yeah, it's kind of going back and forth his interest as, he grew up a South Carolina fan. At the beginning of the process, I think he really liked the Gamecocks. They kind of fell back a little bit for a while there. It seemed like he was a lock to go at Clemson. Clemson coaches were actually there. Robbie Caldwell, one of the other Clemson coaches, was actually there to watch him play on Saturday. So Clemson kind of had a big lead for a while there. I think that lead has kind of evaporated a bit going down the stretch. But he's also looking at some out-of-state schools. Clemson, along along with Florida being the out-of-state school, and one other school that I'm losing right now. But, I think with South Carolina, the big thing is going to be to get him back on campus for an official visit. Right now, he is not scheduled to take an official visit to South Carolina. Now, he does love Sean Elliott. He's got a great relationship with Sean Elliott, the offensive line coach there. So that, to me, is kind of the lone reason that Carolina has been able to stay in the mix, even with the big Clemson lead, and even with the coaching change at South Carolina. The fact Sean Elliott is still there, has that strong relationship with him, that has really helped the Gamecocks at least hang on. So, they're not obviously in the lead right now. I think the big thing, again, got to get them on campus, got to get the official visit. If that happens, then I can actually see South Carolina making a late run at him.
Gamecock Central Radio, Emerson Phillips with Wes Mitchell. We want to invite you to get the new free phone apps that are available. You can listen to Gamecock Central Radio on your phone. The iPhone app is out. We've got an Android app available as well. And we're on iTunes. Simply search Gamecock Central Radio for all three. Wes, I know you're in Spartanburg this week covering the Shrine Bowl, so the transition to the new staff. Talk about what's on tap this week for Will Muschamp and his staff.
Anything they do this week will have to be via phone because of the dead period. So it actually that's part of the reason it was so important, I think, for them to hit the ground running last week. You saw Muschamp literally go from press conference to Richmond Northeast High School. So there was a sense of urgency. I think some of that is obviously you want the perception to be that there's a sense of urgency, but there was a real sense of urgency in the fact that there was going to be no other opportunity to get the early enrollee prospects on campus. That was literally the only opportunity to do that. So, you look moving forward, it actually backs off a little bit on the recruiting trail for the holidays. That will give Muschamp and his staff really a chance to, continue to build the staff, go hire or go set up the hiring of some, the rest of the guys to fill out his coaching staff with assistant coaches. And then also I think it would give South Carolina an opportunity to reset their recruiting board. Probably really wasn't a whole lot of time to really sit back and do that prior. So they basically prioritized the in-state guys and the mid-year enrollees. Now this will give them an opportunity to meet as a staff, talk about where they want to go in January, and try to make some big moves with some big-time players.
Wes, how many Gamecock recruits are hoping to enroll in January?
Well, part of that's going to depend on how many of these guys they can land. You look, the big one is Brandon McElwain, who right now is trying to make a decision on if he is going to enroll early or not. Last we were told he was kind of going back and forth on that. He wants to go home. Chris Clark actually has an update on that there on the website where he kind of goes into some detail about that decision. But Brandon does want to go home and kind of just talk things out with his family and make a final decision on if he's going to enroll early or not. You got C.J. Freeman, the wide receiver that's committed. He's making his final decision on a school on Tuesday. And, if he sticks with South Carolina, he's an early enrollee guy. If South Carolina can land Brian Edwards, he's an early enrollee guy. Chris Smith also is someone that was actually unable to take his official visit. He's run out of weekends to do that, but he told me after the game on Saturday that he's still planning on enrolling early as well. So, and then let's see, DeMarcus King and Kevin Ridley, the two four-star guys that were also on campus, just as targets, obviously not committed right now, but those two targets are early enrollees as well. So the number of early enrollees is going to primarily be determined by, which of these guys South Carolina can land.
You can get breaking Gamecock news alerts delivered to your email inbox. Just text USC to 42828. Text USC to 42828. Or visit the Gamecock Central homepage for more information. Emerson Phillips with Wes Mitchell here on Gamecock Central Radio. Wes, talk about some of the kids that are playing in the Shrine Bowl. The Gamecocks obviously heavily interested in Shrine Bowl players from both South and North Carolina every year. That's no different this year.
No different at all. You got Pete Leota, the South Carolina commitment on the North Carolina side, and a guy we just talked about earlier, John Simpson's out here. Sam Denmark, the kid from Hanahan that actually also is an early enrollee of South Carolina. I can get him. I failed to mention him earlier, but he's a guy I'm actually looking forward to seeing a great deal of Chris Smith out here. Really a decent amount of guys that I think are talented as well, that possibly are going to be able to make a name for themselves this week too out here. That I think it's going to be interesting, because every single year it seems like there's a guy or two that maybe isn't quite on that big school SEC ACC radar, and kind of comes out here and makes a name for himself. So I'm interested to see some of those guys. And a kid I really like is the Colin Hill kid from Dorman, the quarterback. I know that the season didn't end the way he wanted to, but it's a big kid that's got a big arm, committed to Colorado State right now. But I think the kid is probably, not that there's anything wrong with Colorado State, but I've just been surprised that he hasn't received a little more big school attention than maybe he has.
Interesting that Will Muschamp and his staff immediately set about trying to work on some in-state kids that are committed to out-of-state schools. You mentioned Sam Denmark had an offer from Virginia Tech, and T.J. Brunson from R&E is committed to Louisville. But the Gamecocks have immediately, turned their attention to these guys, and it looks like, that's part of the plan that Coach Muschamp had coming in. I'm wondering how they're going to continue to try to do that, Wes, and what are the chances the Gamecocks can land some more talent from here in South Carolina?
Yeah, I think you have to do that. I think South Carolina has to make in-state a priority. Even the years that South Carolina, even South Carolina as a state is down, I think you still have to make the in-state guys, priority recruits. T.J. Brunson, I think South Carolina is in pretty good shape there at the end of the day. Sam Denmark, I'm going to talk to him at the Shrine Bowl practice. I think he's a little bit more torn right now. I think he's kind of going back and forth. Very much a good kid, and a kid that feels, like he gave his word to Virginia Tech. Obviously, Virginia Tech is a school that's also had a coaching change. So, I think that probably helps South Carolina there. But, going forward, I think just the high school coaches in the state of South Carolina, knowing that the state of South Carolina is going to be a priority for the Gamecocks, knowing that it's important to Muschamp staff, knowing that their kids are going to be recruited. I think that's the biggest deal going forward, is the perception of South Carolina as a football program. And I think Muschamp's first week or so on the job has shown that it is going to be a priority.
All right, Wes Mitchell will have continuing coverage of all these top recruits from South and North Carolina that are converging in Spartanburg for the Shrine Bowl this Saturday. Wes, we appreciate the update. We look forward to talking with you more later in the week.
All right, Emerson, have a good one, man. I appreciate it.
All right, that's Wes Mitchell, and I'm Emerson Phillips. We'll have more Gamecock football here on Gamecock Central Radio. Thanks for joining us.